When the terrorists struck the Twin Towers in New York, I called my wife at home, told her to turn on the news, that our nation was under attack. And she asked me at the time, she said, well, do you think the Pentagon will get hit? And I said, no. The Pentagon is one of the safest places in the world. Don't worry about me. Everything's going to be fine. And then about 20 minutes after I told her that, the Pentagon got hit with a terrorist plane.
There is smoke pouring out of the Pentagon.
Yeah, went in the Pentagon.
Hi, folks. This is Twitch, your host for Alert and Alive. I served in the United States Army as a military police officer for 30 years and retired as a full colonel. In the previous podcast, I spoke with you about my assignment at the Pentagon during 9/11, the infamous terrorist attack on the building, on our nation. And I want to go into a little more detail on that today and what I was doing when all of that happened. I was assigned to work in the Pentagon as a military police organization integrator. At the time that I was assigned to the Pentagon, our family lived in Stafford, Virginia, which is about 40 miles south. And because of the heavy traffic each day along the I-95 corridor, the trip would go much faster if you could get into the HOV lanes. And to get into the HOV lanes there, you have to have at least 3 people to ride along. And so it was my habit to go over to a local McDonald's in Stafford each morning at 5:30 and there get in a line with other people and wait for drivers to come up to the line with a little sign in the windshield stating where in the Washington, D.C. area that you were going to. Then you would jump in the vehicle with that person along with another person, so there were 3 in the car and you could take the HOV lane. So I would get there around 6:30 in the morning, then I would go down to the Pentagon gym, work out for an hour or so, and then go into the building to do my duties. It just so happened that on the day of the 9/11 attacks, when I got to the gym and opened up my bag to work out, I had forgotten my gym shoes. And I remember being so frustrated. So I closed up my bag, I went up to the building where my office was and started work on emails and doing early morning kind of activities. And it turns out that during this particular time of my assignment, I was also working on a Department of the Army task force, which took us out of the Pentagon and into Crystal City into a high-rise office area where we could oversee the Pentagon, but get us out away from influences and other kinds of things that would affect our work on this task force. So I did my early coordination in the building earlier than what I usually do and went over to my office in Crystal City. When the terrorists struck the Twin Towers in New York, I called my wife at home, told her to turn on the news, that our nation was under attack. And she asked me at the time, she said, well, do you think the Pentagon will get hit? And I said, no. I said, the Pentagon is one of the safest places in the world. Don't worry about me. Everything's going to be fine. And then about 20 minutes after I told her that, the Pentagon got hit with a terrorist plane. Fortunately for me, I was in the high-rise building in Crystal City where I had been working with this other task force. But had I been in the Pentagon itself when that plane flew into the building, it struck the general area where I had been working in my other office. I really don't know what would have happened had I remained in the building. I would tell you that once that attack took place, the entire city shut down. Okay, the subways didn't move. Nobody could drive their private vehicles in and out of that area because it was closed off for emergency responders, the police, the fire trucks, the ambulances to respond to what had happened. You could sense a feeling of panic in the building, in the entire city. Nobody really knew what was happening or if this was the first of more attacks to follow. Those individuals who are not directly involved with saving lives or putting out the fires or responding were asked to evacuate the building immediately. And I was one of those individuals. You know, if you're a vehicle trying to get into Fort Myer, then you're going to be in a long line waiting because the military police at the gates are going through every vehicle, searching every vehicle, and with bomb dogs to to sniff things out to ensure that nothing else can get through and hurt or cause damage if that would have been the plan of terrorists. I ended up not having any communications on my cell phone with my family, and it took me till about 8 o'clock that night to get back home to Stafford, Virginia, where I had to literally do some hitchhiking, unfortunately, and a lot of walking, and people were gracious enough to pick me up and take me home that were further out away from the city in the attacks. Weeks later, I took a couple of my sons to the sites of the Twin Towers in New York City. And I wanted them to see and understand what a horrific attack this was against our country, where more Americans died that day than when the Japanese attacked Pearl Harbor.